So good evening, all of you. I welcome all the participants for the fifth day of our second international webinar. Today we are going to have a very hot topic where irrespective of your branches, you will be interested to attend this session, and we have a wonderful speaker too. Whether you are in a multinational company, a small enterprise, or an average one, or an individual, you are no doubt at risk of a cyber attack. People are uploading personal information to social media daily. Credit card information is being shared like wildfire, and company data is being stored in potentially unsecured cloud storage services. To successfully fight against cybercrime, it has never been more important for companies and individuals to understand cybersecurity defense and prevention. Yet, remarkably, cybersecurity does not have enough professionals to meet its demand. With the evolution of the PC and smartphones, life has become easier, but it has emerged as a trouble option in case of negligence. Many stories are highlighted in relation to the identification of fraud deeds and proliferation of data breaches, which resulted in major consequences for internet users. Cyber attacks have become an unavoidable offense, and therefore it's majorly important to understand the affairs of cybersecurity in an actual sense. So now let me introduce our speaker of today's session. So here we have Muthezhilan from US, San Francisco. He's a CEO of SecuSol Inc. company. And Muthezhilan received his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Annamalai University and his master's in business administration from Annamalai University, and is currently pursuing his PhD. And he was involved with developing computer programs way before his bachelor's degree days, and have worked in the industry now for more than 30 years. And currently he is the CEO of SecuSol Inc., which he founded to provide security solutions. He has been consulting with large corporations like Facebook, Apple, eBay, and PayPal, to mention a few. And of course, Muthezhilan is a motivational speaker, and he has spoken on information security in a conference for Northern California colleges for dean and registers, which was received well. And he also have spoken to thousands of students in helping them on how to start preparing themselves to face the job market. Recently, he is also managing the digital transformation and faculty development and training for schools, Tamil schools in United States. So here we go. We will invite Muthezhilan to take over the session. Thank you.
Good morning, Ushaa. Good evening. For me, it's morning, sorry.
The speaker, and good evening to the participants.
No, sure, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Can everyone hear me very well?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So this is, as you know, good evening, everyone, to the participants. I would like to give everyone an open minute in the open mic, because this subject is a very open subject. When we talk about information security, anywhere from very small to large corporations, impact could be a large. So we can talk for hours, and I'm open to answer all the questions, whatever I know. If I don't know, I'll get back to you. And then the best part is I have a quick agenda, but if anyone is specifically looking for a certain area, or if you don't want some fundamentals, I can skip those. All I want to do is give a presentation of what the agenda is today. And then, some of you can speak up and say, hey, this looks good, or we don't want this. First, let me start with that quickly. Let me put on the agenda first. One thing I would like to know is when I present it, just let me know, Ushaa, what we see here. Do we see the full screen?
No, the screen is not shared.
Of my short. Okay. This.
Were you able to share the screen?
I'm going to. I just wanted to make sure everything's good. Do you see this full screen?
Yeah, information security.
Okay. If it's a full screen, then we are good.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the time, I would like to ask the participants if you can speak up. That will be great.
Yes.
Just to wake me up.
That's a good joke.
These are the things that I wanted to cover today. Is there any specific area you want me to cover?
You're going to cover all of these, right?
All of this, definitely.
And
But if I cover this full,
insist more on that, you will talk more on that, right?
right, exactly.
I would
So even,
require the password management.
password management is a lot of fun. We'll go there. Initial portion, there's a lot of material. If we talk, it might take 2 hours, which I don't think you want to. But if there is anything that you don't need it, most of them are, I believe, in the fact, teaching faculty. So there's a lot of things already Anyone specific in terms of anything you don't want or you want it? Any comments?
We would be very happy if you could tell how we can be safe. Concentrate, talking more on the safety part.
Okay.
How can we safeguard the information?
That will be great.
Anybody, participants, if you have any suggestions, please turn on your mic and you can speak out.
Let me see. There's a couple of chats. Oh, for some reason, I could not see the chat here because I'm sharing. Okay, this is all good evening. Okay, good evening, everyone. So let's jump in. Anyone want to say anything at all? Maybe not. Okay. All right.
Social media.
Oh, that's good. Let's talk. Let me quickly run through what is information security. So it's going to be probably an hour or so that I'm going to talk about it. And then, social media, encryption.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, there's encryption. There's a lot of subject on, things we can talk about encryption. So let's talk introduction to information security. We are talking about history, all of this you already saw. So let me move on to jumping directly to that. So what is mean by information security anyway? Why is it important or how safe are we? And then the first question is, how many of you think whatever the data that we have is safe? So when we talk about information security, we know a lot of people try to get the data into that and we try to put security around, but let's see what it means. I'll, if I don't get to the chat right away, I will, and then, read through that and answer you at the end. The state of being protected against unauthorized use of information, right? Especially electronic data. That's what we're talking about these days as cybersecurity or information security. Or the measures taken to achieve how can I, block unauthorized usage. So we all probably, some of you might be in the field of IT or information security. So this is nothing but the CIA, the triad of information is, hopefully, you all know what is, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Sometimes, it's a question of confidentiality. So that's what we are talking about when it comes to information security, where, availability is required, because if you protect everything, you can't do your job. So you need the right availability. At the same time, you need confidentiality. But when somebody touches it, when somebody changes things, still the integrity of the data should be maintained. That's the triad of the information security. It's a set of process that we develop in order to maintain all these. So the growing use of all of these mobile applications, web applications, is posing a risk to a lot of information security. So that's where we are today. So this just talks about same thing, how can we provide or protect from misuse, use, disclosure, destruction, modification, or disruption. We can say all of this because the intention is malicious. So that is where we need to try to protect. When I say malicious, it's not, all these things can happen. We can destruct, we can modify, we can, use the data, but for good purposes. If it is for malicious purpose, then that is where we have the issue. So let's touch base, history. Those days, people used to, write in papers, books, and then we sorted out by, papers, filings. So, club together the information and put together in file folders. That's what we used to do in those paper days. Now, most of the paper days are going away. Still some, businesses are still running in papers. The world is completely moved. There is about still 20% in paper. We still move out to information security. When it comes to saving all the data, sometimes we put in as important files, right? So we mark them as important, very important. Back in those days, at least, if you look at like 50 years ago or 60 years ago, I'm talking about the United States, people have houses and they don't lock when they go out. They don't lock at all. They just close the door and walk out wherever they want to go. I am sure in India, we had that about 100 years ago, definitely. And that's when people started at some point in time as the quote, people, those who were greed and wanted to know what it is, started probably with the title of thieves. So once we got them, yeah, we started using all this, right? So we put the files and then big locks in there. Okay, so what happens? So there is always the thieves, and then it's a competition between protection. So once you put this big lock, here you go. They come with blades, cut the locks, and then use the pins to open, whatever mechanisms. Finally, they even take the whole door lock, right? All kinds of things happen. Again, what we do, we put more security in there. The same thing happens even in the data security. The moment we put data in there, people try to steal. So ultimately what they are doing is, when we come to 7 layers of security you must have studied, there's network security. Everything that you try to protect is ultimately to steal the data. So what we need to protect is the data. Data security is one area we'll kind of focus. So when let's say you are all working for an institution or an organization, who is responsible for information security, right? Is it the security information responsibility is yours, or is the organization's? So let's see. Organization is nothing but us, all of us, individuals. So it is everyone's responsibility. It's you, me, whoever touches the data, whoever sees something happening wrong, it's everyone's responsibility. Then who's the data owner? Is he going to be the data creator or the collector? Let's say one person is creating all the data, the other person is collecting and keeping it somewhere. Who's responsible? Everyone again, right? Is it the application owner? If you look into the reality in industry, when we build softwares, there is an application team who's in charge of, who knows what to do in the application. And then there's, business owners on the other side. They go, oh yeah, who is responsible? You or the IT? So anyone handling the data is responsible. And then the data owner may classify the data as high risk, right? Regardless of the standards. Sometimes industry standards are mentioned for different type of data, but beyond that, they only know what the classification of the data is. So exposure could cause reputational damage. Means somebody stole your data and then the reputation has gone down. It could be sometimes potentially fiscal damage, because there are regulations that blocks certain things that cannot happen, but if it happened, so there could be lawsuits, and regulations will, government bodies or whatever that organization may sue you. And then identity fraud, like that. Let's say I stole all the important numbers of people, so then I can go mimic as if them, and then do a lot of identity frauds. So that can be one. Generally, loss of access to the data systems. There are ways where people take over your systems and then demand money, right? And you can't do much about it. And basically, because somebody lost it, you could lose your job. So always, be responsible. So it's no, there are a lot of data classifications we have. It could be high risk, it could be low risk, or it could be medium risk. We can define based on what kind of risk they are. Companies usually do it something like public information. That means which is already available publicly, and then there's something called private information. Then there's within the privates there's confidential, and then there's highly secure, right? They can classify in any of the ways. And then some of the regulations are there, like HIPAA is all here, primarily controlling all the health industry data, because any patient's data is secured. It should be known only to the patient, so not to anyone else, right? So similarly, PCI is nothing but credit card information. Like any companies that do transactions with credit card numbers, there are certain rules and regulations. There are some certain certifications that they need to do. Not everyone does it, but they have to. Otherwise, they won't get certification. Otherwise, other businesses who's trying to do the business with them, they won't be happy with. So there's the student data protection, area. So I'm not sure very much. I'm sorry, but in India, I don't know what kind of regulations are there, but I'm sure there is some, and how to protect them. Let's quickly go through some of the classifications. If it is low risk, it is intended for public disclosure. For example, you have, let's say, we will talk about what kind of data it is. So the loss of all of this CIA, right, will not have a big impact, adverse impact on any of the mission of the organization or safety or finances or reputation. It won't affect much if somebody steals it. That kind of data is called the low risk data. Moderate, generally this data is not available to the public. Typically it's not available, but somebody can steal it. High risk is data that you need to protect it, you need to protect it by law, or maybe it is, government data. There's quite a few things. So that's how we classify the data. Examples of the low risk data, right? Research data. Let's say at owner's discretion that they, published. So this is all published data for information for on, institutions' website. So if I go there and I want to talk about some of your institutions and I go, oh, look up for, Dr. Ushaa. So I can look up for all the information. There are information available on the website. And of course, there are the company programs that runs and scrounge all the data from all the available websites, right? So, I'll come to protection when we write these things. Then you have to have policy procedure manuals. If you put it up there, everything they can do. And companies or colleges posting job postings, people will steal that. They will know what kind of openings are there. And then institutions, contact information, right? Anything that's available in public. So for example, some colleges would, publicize their campus maps. Sometimes you don't want to go to complete detail to be posted out, but they do. So these are the low risk though, because it's available already. When it comes to moderate risks, there are unpublished research data. Somebody haven't published yet, and then student records and admissions, whatever we store, it's only for the particular, institution that they maintain. For example, the staff's, personal files, benefits, salary, birthday, personal contact information, all of this need to be protected, right? It's a moderate risk though. It's non-public information or contracts between the companies or institutions to others do not even, have to go public. Internal memos. Sometimes, you might have seen in the news, the CEO sending out an email and then next day it's out in the paper. So, somebody leaked it. All these things can be protected a lot, like employee staff ID numbers. I'm not sure how much it is being protected in every institution. If you are not, let's focus on that area. And high risk, for example, health information I talked about. And then ID numbers, for example, Aadhaar card number supposed to be, the really protected number, but I don't know. I'm not sure how much it is protected now. We have something similar called the social security numbers. People don't even want to talk about it. They don't want to say it, because once you have that number, you can do anything with that. A lot more things. So credit card numbers again. This is all to be protected so much that for a transaction, if somebody does it, we are not supposed to store the credit card number in the system. That's how the system needs to be built. But, we all grew up. In India, when I grew up, we give the credit card, somebody will take a copy of that and keep it. So that can be misused. Not anymore, they shouldn't be doing that. Even for systems, sometimes you go online, they'll collect all the credit card information and they'll store it in their Excel file or Google Sheet. We are not supposed to do that. So financial account numbers, like bank account numbers. Driver's license is very important in many part of the world, in several countries. Passport, visa numbers, a lot of things that in India it's very casual that we take as a photocopy and then leave it there. Who cares? But going forward, don't leave that, because that is what people are looking for. The quality thieves are looking for. So data handling. Similarly, what I talked about when storing what is called the data at rest, right? This is called the data, anything that you saved in the database, in a spreadsheet, wherever it is, files. You can't store all the data. Some of them come into the picture of you cannot store at all, which is, I've talked about the credit card information. You cannot store the whole 16 digit of the credit card anywhere else. So, and then some things we can do an encryption. There are type of data you can encrypt and then store it. And there are something called masking. So you can mask it and then store it. And in some cases, it will be, when somebody goes to the database, it will show as 1, 2, 3, 4, but the real number is something else. And something is called scrubbing. You scrub a portion of the data and then save it. So these are the kind of stores that when we talk about the data address, there is something called data in motion. What it means is anytime you have a data in the database and your application is accessing it. So there is an amount of data that travels between the client and the server. So when it moves, people could tap in that move pipe and then steal the data. So that is where we come with encryptions. There are several types of encryptions there. And one of them is, for example, SSL, which is the secure sockets layer. We do that. And then recently, everybody is forced to do with, what's called the TLS, which is the transport layer security. So that's the latest that people want every application to follow. And there are certificates that we do. Certificates between the client and the server. For example, WhatsApp. If you guys started noticing in the last 1.5 years, you will see the first a message saying from now on with this person it's end-to-end encrypted. That means nobody can tap in between. Even if they tap it, they don't get what exactly you type. Earlier, it was all open. If somebody can tap when you send some messages, could be in sometimes in WhatsApp we use for all kinds of information. There are some highly secured information goes through WhatsApp, right? If it is not secured, somebody would have tapped in between, they could get all the information. Then the authentication mechanisms between systems, clients and servers, and the information have to pass through so many computer systems. You can do authentication that only certain companies or only certain systems from certain IPs can access. All that you can set it up and you can handle that. So application data security, I don't know about the colleges, what kind of software they use. Some of them here in the US, they use Banner, PeopleSoft, there's something called Colleague, all of that. But you may have different roles to play, right? So you may have privilege to extract the data. You may have the privilege when you're working on to change permissions, to add or remove data. And then sometimes we take the data exported out, right? We just do thinking about, oh yeah, I'm going to take a backup anyway. So sometimes we take the backup into the local computers and leave it there forever. Someday when we don't need the computer or a new computer comes in, yeah, we just don't even care. We just leave it and somebody can steal the data. So with that said, it says my internet connection is unstable. Hopefully you can all hear me. So, all of this is application data security. There's do's and don'ts. Export only when necessary. If you need to absolutely export data, do it. Otherwise, don't try to do that. And then if you're sharing with, someone, be very cautious who you are sharing with, because, they may not be as secure as you think in your mind. You might just say once, hey, don't share it with anyone. We all know that secret. And then that person would call someone else and say, shh, don't share it with me. I got it, but don't share it. It keeps going. And ultimately, you have no control where the data went. So try not to share. If needed to absolutely share that, make sure, the information is put in such a way that they also maintain the confidentiality. So other than that, if you are not the data owner, better be, asking who the data owner is. Somebody must have sent you and someone else is looking for, and then say, hey, you know what? I couldn't reach him. So, oh, don't worry, I'll give you. Don't do that, because you never know why he didn't give to the other person or she didn't give to the other person, right? So ask them, hey, he's asking for you, but what can we do? So if you are responsible for others' access, this is one thing, who has access to the system is one thing everybody ignores. So there are times what happens is people come and say, hey, you know what, I need to work on this data. Can I have this access? We will give access to them and then we'll forget about it. They will continue to have the access for a longer time. And that causes a lot of issues by not only them stealing, but somebody else can hack their system and ultimately, get into the data. So there is always a good way of protecting is have a review, monthly review for yourself and see whether whoever has access, do they still need it or they don't need it, take it out, right? And then if you see something happening, your manager or higher authority, whoever it is, go tell them. So when it comes to storage, this is how we used to have all the storage, right? File systems, all kinds of storage that we had. And then we moved on to these kind of devices. Some of you might know what these are, some of you may not, because these are all, olden tapes and hard disks. This is how it used to be. I used to have a hard disk that like this thick, like a book, that's only 10 megabytes. My somewhere it should be there, but I don't have it now. So then came the floppy disks. This is all like 5.25 inches. I don't even know whether we have somewhere. It's, 5.25 inches of floppies. Then came the smaller floppies, then zip hard disks, and then portable devices. And now, it kind of goes, into nano now. So these days, data is accessible by handling in these kind of small chips where it's much easier to carry, tap it out, and lose it. Those days, storage files are huge. You can't even take and carry, and that's different. But these days, I have seen on the road when I walk out, I have seen people drop disks. If you take it, that's it. There are personal information, there are sensitive information. So always be careful with storage. And when it comes to the storage in terms of real digital storage, you can do local computers. You can do Google, Microsoft, OneDrive or G Drive, and then some companies have T drives, like, file servers that they may put it in there, store it on secure file server. There's some called specifically meant for sharing. The typical drives are automatically mapped in the company that how they write it, but in colleges, I'm not sure if you're IT administrator, always try to, map it somewhere and then take a backup and see who has access to it. If you don't need to give them, don't give them. So this is one thing. In specific network shares, sometimes people don't know it's called for your individual data to be stored, but people even share that, personal data into others to, just rather than sending a file, they'll say, okay, I'll share the whole drive, you take it from there. So, avoid that. Online part of the storage, yes, definitely G Suite. When they give it to you, it's personally for you to store. Typically for low and moderate risk data only. Don't put any of the high risk data in there, because even if somebody hacks into your Gmail accounts, then they could get onto that, right? So collaboration of tools, now a lot of things have happened. Sharing best practices. Again, Google groups, if you create within for your own institution, if you have Google, you can have a Google. Then if you're sending a link, send it to them, make sure, it's sent to the group. So you can manage only the group. If you're sending to individuals, then you have to go and clean up from, which individual that you have to take it out. Sometimes when you do emails, when you do send things, email systems, anything, it's not about Google or Microsoft. They have some default settings. Just don't accept and then just click on it. You have to see what kind of security is there. We can skip, some of the things are very basic, and then you would know how to handle the Google Drive and how to have in team drives. We'll skip there. This is all settings, right? It used to be like that. This keeps changing, but so there's a private only, or if you want to do how you do it. Do you want to give, by default, complete edit capability or just a view capability? You can change all of that. Let's talk about the physical data storage. Paper copies with moderate high. Those times, if you're printing anything, Don't leave it in the printer, because in common printers, this is what I have seen. When you walk there, somebody printed something and then left it. Then if they forgot, they printed, and then it's lying down. People can see their salary or whatever. That kind of information has been lying around in printers. Try not to do that. And if you're putting it in there, store in a locked cabinets, because that's more important. And especially when you have your computer desk, always make it clean. Do not leave any sensitive data in there. External drives, especially hard drives, USBs. Make sure they are all encrypted. There is an option to encrypt it if just in case if it's found in the street. If it is encrypted, I can't get into it unless the encryption key is there, right? Which is very hard to get it. So same thing with DVDs and CDs. Oh, talk about this. Everybody stores in CDs and DVDs those days, right? They write it, keep it, shelf it. 10 years later, 5 years later, one day they say, this is all old. I don't need it. And then they throw it. That is where goes all the important information. These are the things people are waiting for to collect and then take it from there. So, I mean, this is common for offices. If you're storing laptops, lock it, otherwise people can steal. These kind of storage we had. And now comes the third-party cloud storages, right? There's Box, there's Dropbox, there's Mega, there's iCloud, Nextcloud. So many, third-party cloud storages have come. And yes, cloud comes with its own challenges in security. There's, regular security servers, in-house data center, and then there's this cloud where somebody else hosts it. How can we, protect? That's a lot more bigger operation than the regular storage. Data review and retention. This is what we generally don't do it. Have time to review. If you don't need it, clean it, delete it. And then, if you're saving files, if you want to specifically know whether they belong to low risk or high risk, you can start with LRM or HR. It's just a suggestion so that you know. And a quarterly review of files. Typically, you do that annual review of files, whether the classification is still valid or not. Sometimes it was a low risk, but due to certain policies, it could have been changed to medium risk or high risk. So make sure you have all kinds of thought process always in your mind, right? And then create an online and offline retention policy. How long do you want to store the data? 1 year later, you don't want it, delete it. Some things, if you want to store for 10 years, keep it. But after 10 years, if you don't need it, delete it. If you don't do it, that is when these data can, go to somebody else. 10 years later, I can get someone's, driving license or ID from the college, right? If they don't easily maintain that. Whenever you see somewhere something wrong, report it, because somebody needs to take action on that. Reusing the data from storage or backup. Do we do it? Yes. How many of us really do it? Very few, because what happens is, so let's say today someone in your department wanted some data. Hey, can you give me that? And I'll give you that. So because we are all busy, because we deal with a lot of data, 6 months later, somebody wants the data. You know what they do? Hey, I know you gave me somewhere, but I don't know where it is. Give me again. So that means you're having files somewhere, some sensitive information sitting in there, logically left, but you don't care about it. This is what happens in a lot of places where you spill the data out. You got to be really, really careful, because otherwise this is all the data that people are looking for, all the legacy data. And then someday, as I said, people throw in trash, they'll take it. How do you do in terms of deletion methods, right? There are so many methods to securely delete it. Some of the legal law and compliance need a proof of destruction. We have that issue. If I have somebody's data, one company that I'm working with, both the companies are merging. So I'm a consultant. I go and work with both of the companies' data. And then when we are done with the merge and the activities are good, they want us to give a proof that all our data has been deleted. So we will completely wipe out the laptops that we have used and get a certification and say, hey, you know what? It's wiped out. Here you go. So, these kind of things. In some cases, there are destruction services. They'll come and delete it. If you have large number of papers, they'll come and, destruct for you. All of these. Let's talk about some of the top issues in terms of, phishing attacks. Brute force attack, for example. Hopefully you know something about phishing attack. If not, let me talk about quickly what phishing attack means. There is a small video, but I don't know how much time we have now. Wow, we are already into 30 minutes beyond that. Okay, so the phishing attacks, Let me talk about that. And then brute force attack. It's nothing but, kind of a password attack. Virus, malware, hopefully about viruses, definitely. And then what's called a ransomware. Weak passwords is one of the biggest. A lot of people have weak passwords. We'll talk about passwords, definitely. And then insider threats. So we'll talk one by one. Let me see if I can just quickly talk about what is phishing means. You can hear, right?
There it is. Another fishy email from someone who acts like you should know them, asking you to send money or click a link. What should you do? Call the help desk? Report it to security? Scramble the fighter jets? Actually, it's much simpler than that. All you need to do is delete the email. When you hit delete, you put an end to a sophisticated attempt to get your personal information, your money, and maybe more. Here's how the bad guys work. They go phishing every day, sending out billions of emails, hoping that there really is a sucker born every minute. All they need is just one sucker to click a link that installs malicious software or malware on their computer, and then they can control it. The malware sends more emails, spreading the infection to other computers around the world, like a bad case of the flu. Now, the malware doesn't just stop at sending email. It also searches for account numbers, passwords, and more to send back to the cyber criminals who wrote the malware. They use this stolen information to access your accounts and to steal information that's vital to you and our organization. You're not alone in dealing with these threats. In fact, IT has already built up multiple layers of defense against malware. They patch applications, keep antivirus software up to date, monitor and prevent access to malicious websites. In fact, they already screen out 95% of the suspicious emails sent our way. But that final 5%, that's right, it ends up in your inbox. In the end, you are the last and most important layer of defense against phishing attempts. So don't get caught. Just delete that suspicious email.
Okay.
It's that simple.
So you got that. Basically, what happens is, phishing means you must have seen all kinds of this kind of emails, because most of the email providers, now they fish out and they know it's a junk email, they know it's malicious, and then they take it out directly into your junk emails. But still, that 5% of the emails come to your systems, and it says, hey, you know what? There's $1 million somebody left. My husband left, my wife left, it's lying in Africa, so can you please give me a bank account number? Nobody will give you even one paisa, right? I mean, it has no value now. Nobody will give you for free. That means something is wrong. Just delete it. Have fun, delete it. I used to forward to my friends and then say, hey, you know what? Somebody put $1 million. Let's not take it. That's what I do. But some of my friends used to call me in those days, hey, there's some money in the US, can you see what it is? Absolutely not. And there are people who will call you. When you touch this information, they'll call you and say, oh, okay. So first thing I'm going to give you like $1,000. Sure. What's your bank account number? They'll give you all that. And then that's all they need to steal your data, right? This is the best part of the phishing. As soon as you click the link, it takes you to a site where it looks exactly like your bank or exactly like PayPal, right? Exactly mimicked website. And then you put in all the information. It says, please log in here. I used to play with this when I studied computers several years ago. I mimicked the screen of the login. So they happily come into the lab and say, okay, here's I'm a username, password. And then I say, oops, sorry, wrong password. And I kill my program. They think, oh, they typed wrong. Next time they type it, it's real. They will really log in. But I capture the whole piece, everything I can get. And then I used to show to the program, say, hey, I know your password. Then I say, what? So I just search and show them, this is your password, right? One guy had a password called, nobody can crack this. He used to, send it to him and say, yeah, you think nobody can crack this? This was back in those days when we learned. But that's phishing. So when that kind of email comes, do not even worry. That is a malicious email. If in your organization, one person clicks it, and that computer is being infected, that can send out emails to everyone, that can try to capture from everyone in the network. All kinds of things can happen. So it could be you who's responsible for the whole thing. Don't do it. Then there is something called spear phishing. Let's talk about, instead of me.
Phishing scams. Don't get caught in their nets. Cybercriminals are increasingly using phishing and spear phishing because they succeed. Any targeted messages have a better than 90% chance of getting a click, 8% chance of users clicking on an attachment, 8% chance users will fill out a web form, 18% chance that users will click a malicious link in an email. Even CEOs get spoofed and share usernames and passwords. What's the difference between phishing and spear phishing? Phishing emails are sent to the general public via mass scams. Impersonate a government agency, bank, or store like Amazon. Spear phishing emails target specific individuals, are personalized, and use facts about you to draw you in. Phishing and spear phishing emails are designed to steal your data, identity, money. The average cost of a phishing scam is $1.6 million. 1 in 3 companies are affected. 30% of phishing emails get opened. A phishing or spear phishing email is one that you didn't initiate. May contain strange URLs and email addresses, often uses improper grammar and misspellings, typically contains attachments that you don't recognize as legitimate, contains a link or email address that you don't recognize, may use language that is urgent or threatening. Don't get caught in the phishing nets. For more information on how to protect your company, click the URL in the comments.
Okay, so you heard that, right? Phishing attacks or spear phishing. The difference is spear phishing is targeted specifically with you, with your interest that I have already stored. Say, for example,
Volume is low, Muthu.
volume is low. Let me just check that. Better now?
Yeah.
Or still slow?
Still low. Low.
Okay. Okay, what's happened? Yes. I'm just detecting problems if there is any. So far it was good, and
Yeah, now it's better.
now it's better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the difference between the phishing and the spear phishing. Spear phishing is specifically targeted for you. For example, you might have noticed, you go to Google and search for, let's say, a nice car, right? What's the best nice car? Or you talk about specifically, let's say Ford. You're looking for something in Ford. And then you go to your Yahoo email, you'll see the advertisement that you're looking for cars. So they'll show you what and all you're looking for. And then you go to, look for some chudidars or sari in some other site. You come back here into your Yahoo email, you'll see the advertisement about saris, So how do they know? So they track anyway, where do you go? What do you do, right? So specifically, phishing emails or spear phishing is targeted for you. So we used to go into computers and then say, it said, even the CEOs do this, right? When you work in the information security department, we used to send emails to people and say how many people even within the information security department can click it. So they will click it. There's one guy who bought a new Harley Davidson motorcycle, right? 1 month ago. So the email sent was to him is like, hey, congratulations, you bought a new, vehicle. So we have a club. You want to join the club? Here's your information. And then he happily put it in, thinking that it's real. But we internally got it and said, ha, we got you. That's the kind of thing that spear phishing comes. But you saw those, whenever those kind of emails comes, put over your mouse. You go to mouse and then tap, see what it says. It might say from a bank, right? For example, I don't know which bank. Let's say Indian Bank. It shows Indian Bank. You put in your mouse around it. It will say indianbank.i.sqyz, whatever it is. That clearly says that is a suspicious email. And then if you say most of it urgent, immediately do it. Action required. All kinds of things will be there in the subject, urging you to do the data. So that means that might be suspicious. When you go inside, when you say Microsoft, the spelling will be something else. Otherwise, your account will be terminated. The spelling will be different. Read through it slowly. So, and then you will find out, oh, this is one. And then they will send you attachments, sometimes exe files, sometimes document files, sometimes spreadsheets. And then it will say, oh, maybe something they sent it. And sometimes it might see one of your friends' name, right? It could send friends from, but then if you go in there, it's not their email. Watch out. These are the things that you need to be really careful in terms of handling those. So how to identify, yeah, we talked about it even in the video. So how do you handle these kind of issues? Generally delete the file. That's the best thing, because the moment you open it, it's gone. It's in your system. So always use, malware or virus protection software as well, because sometimes when you try to open, they will detect it. So we talked about few of the top issues now, phishing, spear phishing, malware, something called ransomware. Let me go there and then talk about that. These days, about a couple of years ago, this started. Someone will maliciously put your file in somewhere, and then they take control of your system. That's it. The entire system is in their control now. Until unless you pay a huge amount of money that they demand, they will not give you the system's control back. The only option is you got to wipe the system out. That means you have to basically give the money out. So you don't want to be going, if somebody taking your system and say, okay, I ended up in a ransomware, so you kind of like it. You lose money. So you don't want to go there. And then a few other things we saw in terms of tops, weak passwords. Oh my God. This is one thing we need to talk about. We'll come to password section, we'll talk more in there. And then also there's brute force. Brute force is nothing but a collection of passwords. They attack with a huge number of passwords and then see whether I can find any of these passwords that you use. So those are the typical top security issues. Sending emails. Some of them, most of the emails that you use, if you put in secure on top of the subject line, it takes into subject mode, secure mode, where you can do that. So let's talk about password for some time. Password, what is it? Supposed to be highly sensitive, right? But people do share, especially for when it comes to systems password, when it comes to the admin account in some software. There is a higher superior authority. There's only one password. So, hey, what is the password for a system? And then he yells the password. Somebody can hear, or most of the time people write the password on the paper and then stick it on the sticky note under their desk, under their laptops, back of the monitors. So these are the places where you can actually, lose system controls. And then the best thing people do is keeping very simple password. They don't want to, they're, I would say, lazy to type a long password, right? Then simply one word they will keep, and with one number. So that is one biggest mistake people do. And keeping the same password for everywhere. Of course, I do understand. Today, every system has a password requirement. Everything that you touch, they want a password. And then we try to keep the same password. If hacker can get one password, then they will try with the same password in every of your systems. They can get to more. So where is it being stored, right? So typically people, paper, here, there, spreadsheets. This is all people store. It's too many passwords now, too many requirements. So we cannot remember that days are gone. We cannot remember 200 passwords for 200 websites. So there are password manager software that's even available free. So you can use that. Use it. All you can keep is one password, which is huge and long. Nobody can crack it. And then inside which you can keep all the passwords. So which is much safer for you. So let's talk about complexity of the password. How many characters should it be, right? Most of the systems today, if you look at it, they are all 8-character passwords. They would say at least put minimum 8 characters. I'm sure you all came through that. Where does this 8-character came from? So there were algorithms that is written in the past that 8 characters, if you have it, it will take at least, quite a challenge for the computer systems to crack it. That's why they want the minimum 8 characters. But what is happening after that is, people said, oh, that may not be enough. Systems can crack it easily. So let's go to 16 characters. Let's go to 24 characters. These are the things that definition went on into the security. So now, security wise, if you can have a 25-character password, that's great. But imagine we have all kinds of system control, then you don't want to use the same password also. How do you come up with 25 characters of password? And every time you log in, you have to use 25 characters. That is painful. You all know about CPU, right? CPUs are computers, primary running engine. So you know something called GPU. I don't know whether you know about GPUs. GPUs are much, much faster, higher capability. So GPUs are used to crack passwords. A GPU, a normal size GPU, right, cheaper one, can do 3.5 billion passwords per second. It can generate 3.5 billion passwords. So what we do is we run GPUs against your database, right? If we run that, I'll take the 3.5 billion passwords per second and check against, oh yeah, let's see whether this person's password is. I'm sure you will get it. I'm sure one of them will got caught, whoever had a cheaper password. So for example, the same GPU, right? If it is run against a longer password, it takes much longer. So for example, CPU will take 2 years for a standard 6-character password, right? A GPU with 83 hours of running, we can find. A CPU will take 2 years to find that password. So what's the difference between the GPU? You can see the powerfulness of that. A powerful GPU can find a 6-character password in 4 seconds, your password, if it is simple. A 7-character will take 17 minutes. It multiplies from 4 seconds to 17 minutes. It's a huge jump. Imagine 1 character, you add 8 characters, it takes 18 hours from 17 minutes. 9 characters, if you do, 48 days. If you do 10 characters, it is 8 years to find the password. It's not so simple. So even though it generates so many passwords, but it's all, something called the dictionary attack. For example, they have a dictionary of, billions and billions of words, but typically people use, right? Most of the time it's your names. People use their own names, certain words, and full of numbers. Sometimes they use their own date of birth. That's the worst part. Everybody have their own date of birth as the password, the PIN numbers in the ATM and all that. It's all the same thing. So be watchful, be careful on, what you do. Replace numbers for certain characters. You can do that. Basically, you can do, 2 is with at and I with 1 or L with 1. Some things you can do, which is much easier, so you can change it. Generally, people are not just good at generating that's anything random. If I ask you and give you 20 seconds, everybody come up with a generated, random password, I'm sure there's only 20% of the people can bring a random password quickly. Others will think, okay, what can be the password? And, it's very hard for us as a people. But using complex passwords in heads of end users, definitely it's a lot of stress. Oh, how can I do that? Where can I? So that's where the password managers come, and then they help you how to do that. Okay, good. This is a sample of the complexity of the password. I'll just make sure that, let me make sure I'm just not skipping any. Okay, good. So these are the example. If it is an open-ended two-way discussion on a stage, I would have asked you guys, guess the passwords, what it is. The first one is nothing but hi, H-I-G-H. That's the word I replaced with 1 and 8. G is 8, and I is 1, and then you can read through it. This is linear, and this is acknowledge. So if you change the password like this, it's hard to crack generally because it's not a word. But these days, because of the system complexity, what they ask is the 25 characters. You don't need to have even this kind of combinations. You can pick 4 random words. If you add up all these, it might come to a large number of size of the password. I just put in something, Chennai Mountain Masala Singapore, right? It has no meaning, is no sentence, but there are 4 different words. You may have 4 words that, always that's, in your mind, top 4 words that you use, put it in there, right? It's hard to crack for a system to completely understand Muthu has something to do with Chennai or mountain or masala or Singapore. No way. So that's better. And then another one, conference security, learned useful practice. Whatever, these kind of words, if you come up with, it's simple password, but very hard to crack. You can do that. And this is one password I came up with. You can see it's all, and it's nothing but my own name. This is my full name. All I put is red color and then changed into some of the characters into hi. Privileged. This is all about passwords. Okay. Then comes to privileged account access. The privileged account is what that I was talking about, system access. Sometimes we give in urgency. We are busy or we are off for like a week or 1 month, and we'll say, hey, when I'm out, can you use this system and then have this password? They will have it. So you have to have the review of what kind of privileged account who has access to it is very, very important. And then sometimes people will say, oh, my dean told I need to access this. You need to go back and ask them. They need to give you a justification as to why they need access. People come up with all kinds of reasons that they need access immediately. I need access to this. Stop them. If you're IT, just stop them. Tell them, no, why do you need it? And then if they want it, you need to be really careful in terms of giving that. And then the password configuration of the privileged account is another thing. People make a lot of mistakes, that they can keep simple passwords because you need to log in more often. Don't do that. And then quarterly review, activity monitoring of the privileged accounts. This is one thing that we all come up with systems to put in. Who logs in using that kind of a privileged account? It's very, very important, because if you, one example is in practical life, huge corporations, if you go in, there is like, let's say I would go hundreds instead of thousands, let's say 1,000 databases that they have. Each database has a privileged account. And then there is about 200 database administrators work on it. So 200 people knew the 1,000 passwords in the system. Let's say, right? That's the way the complexity of the password is. Today, if somebody leaves, out of 200 people, one person leaving is very common here, right? One person leaves. Now this guy knows the password. If some way they can attack, get through the network into the system, he can have access. This is a painful problem that the companies face. Immediately, they have to change the password for all the 1,000 databases. Immediately. So that takes a longer time when you do this. So let's say it takes about 2.5 days to change password for all of the systems. And not only that, it's like in the production, it's in QA environment. Every environment has its own, like thousands of databases. So that is a big challenge for all the corporations. Now, there are products now, they will say the password is live, only one, 30 minutes, the password life itself is. When I want a password, I generate a password. I use only that password for 30 minutes. But if I'm logged in, it works. But the moment I log out, that password doesn't work, right? So we can talk more on that. So there is incident response planning. What happens if an incident happened? What if you notice that immediately somebody stole the data? I can see somebody has the access to the data. Do you have a plan of action? Most of the companies don't. I mean, companies, they come up with, small companies, bigger companies, we have a complete plan of action. So there's always a security center. Immediately it's logged in. For example, we have put in some triggers, automatic triggers also. This is all sophisticated side of it. But for your institutions, always try to have a plan, right? What needs to be done immediately? How do we get that data not going further? Let's say there is a credit card company that we work with, right? So somebody has all the database. If there's somebody, even the internal access, that's one of the top areas that we said, internal threat, which means the people, those who are supposed to be working internally are sometimes they have the minds of, hey, you know what? Wow, this much data, let me take it. And they say, oh, all the students' address and phone number, great, I want it. All the staff phone number, I want, great. This is what people do. So we have put in triggers in the systems in such a way, if a query, even a select statement, right, simple query being run in a system, and then that, let's say, it takes out 5,000 credit card columns, some information that they are running, immediately it will trigger into their security operations center. And they would immediately call that person and say, hey, I see you're running a query. Do you have a business reason, justification for why you are running this query? They have to answer it. Otherwise, it gets triggered. But it's a lot of work, a lot of money, to invest this kind of systems. But at least you have a plan of action in case if somebody stole it. A typical example was institutions, you have internal calculations, something you stored in a document, right? Management has this admission procedures. There are some, who can be allowed loan or not. One of the real incident, it happened here. I may not be able to say which institute it is, but it's one of the major institutions in the US. So they had a formula to calculate how a loan can be processed for certain people with certain, financial and difficulties. That whole calculation was sitting in a Google Drive document shared between all the HR or the loan processing team only. But because they introduced, Google Drive for the whole campus, every student has it. Somewhere when they did their permissions or whatever they changed, it is available somewhere. One student, when he was searching, accidentally got into this and said, wow, there is something great. And then he found it. It's not even malicious. He didn't know that. He thought great information. He posted it out in the internet and said, hey, great, there's something here. I saw that. And that's it. So that got into a big mess. So we all started jumping in, and then when we were hired as consultants to do an analysis of their systems, what the security vulnerabilities are. So we worked with them to block and all kinds of things. So at least have some kind of action plan as to what you're going to do. Then comes the vulnerability management, right? So for example, periodic scanning of your vulnerabilities. There are several types of vulnerabilities. That's one thing that came up in the video as well. Patch management. Sometimes you have patch and you don't even apply the patch. If you go to somebody's systems, it will say Outlook 2001. There's something wrong there because there's so many security things have come up. Always try to invest a little bit money on that and put latest patches in there. Some of the patches are free. So just do it. Fixing vulnerabilities and fixing them as early as possible. As soon as they release, it's much better. If you have Windows systems, most of the time it will pop up and say, hey, you have a new one. Do you want to upgrade? Usually the tendency is to say no, right? So, but try to upgrade it. That's much better in terms of vulnerability management. Then we'll talk a little bit on this. This is called pen testing. We do specifically in organizations where penetration testing or pen test we call. What they do is they try to hack into your own system. They plan with the ethical hackers or a private organization that we tell them, hey, try to hack me. I think it happened recently with one of the apps that happened in India. I think recent with the COVID situation that I don't remember. I'm sorry, the name of the app. Our prime minister said, hey, you know what? We have a great Indian app, try hacking. I think somebody hacked and got a huge, good amount of money or, price for that. So they are ethical hackers. They can tell you and say, they can find all kinds of hole and then hack your systems. So plan for that. Again, social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, all kinds of chats that we have. What are the challenges? How could we avoid? Biggest thing is posting institutional data in a social media is a big no. Definitely don't do that. I mean, even your private information, some people put all kinds of private information in Facebook, right? They say, oh, I'm going for a vacation in 1 week to Mexico. Great. So that means I know 1 week your house will be empty. Great. Somebody will attack it. So this is why some people, if you see, they'll post a Mexican vacation after they come back after 3 months. It won't be saying any date, time, what it is. So they're trying to be safe, but at the same time trying to be saying, hey, this is all we did. Never post your personal ones, and then most of the people put their emotions in there. So I know next morning when I meet you, I saw you have a problem, right? Here you go. There's the possibility of losing your own personality. So don't do that. And then institutional data, definitely don't do that. A lot of people have done this mistake. And they will just go and say, my company, this is what happened happily. It's supposed to be a confidential information. Mobile devices, wow, how safe are they? So we all have mobile devices these days. And, we think that we can use the mobile for everything. Yes, can it be hacked? Definitely, yes, it can be hacked as well. Is there something that the mobile, data being collected? I'm talking about 5 years ago, right? Not even now. 5 years ago, we all had very little mobile, smartphones and all that. About 70% of all the data that goes through in your mobiles are being collected. So much every data that you move from one place to another, having your location on, everything is being captured and stored in companies. So 70% of the data that captured are not at all being used. There's only 30% that they're using. That means someday if they find a technology, hey, they can go back and dig your data and find out and say, hey, this is all you did. Okay, here you go. They can use it. So much of data is being collected on your phone. So, be watchful, but there are some things, every app that you download, amazing. They want your call, they want your contact, they want everything that you have in that mobile. There's only one app I have seen. It's meant for that Tamil Tirukural, where they said, we don't collect anything from you. I wanted to really clap and put that, whoever developed that app. That's the way it should be, but people are not. People are interested in collecting data and storing because data storage is cheaper these days, very cheap. So people want to go there and then use a lot of things. That's how they do. Wi-Fi. I don't know. I think, thanks to all these companies in India that give you a lot of free data plan, high data plan. So these days people have changed. I think earlier it used to be in Wi-Fi. Anytime you walk into a mall, you walk into some place where it says free Wi-Fi, immediately people connect to their phone in there. Oh, they can trap you. They can get all kinds of data out of your connection. Some of them in offices, right? I don't know about most of the time people just walk out from their desks, leaving the laptop open without locking it. All I need is 20 seconds of your system to be open. In one company, what we did, we came up with a program. It is 20 seconds that somebody leaves the desktop open. I'll insert my, the USB card quickly in there, hit, that's all I need, I remove it. 20 seconds it takes because it copies the file. Then he would have no idea that I can control his system from my own system. So he'll be working happily. I mean, because it's internal, all of a sudden I can play some loud music in his system. He would have no idea where the sound is coming from, which program is playing, nothing he would see. And then I can switch it off. So, I can take control of the complete system in about 20 seconds if they can leave the computer open. So anytime when you leave your computer, lock it. Lock it, lock it. That's how you need to learn Wi-Fi. If it's free, be very watchful. Don't collect. Have a policy, and strategy in terms of what kind of security we should have. How do we train the users? Train all your users. I mean, even it can be an annual review, 1 hour of training for the whole, organization throughout the year, or put some, learning management system, put a video that everybody have to play. And, that kind of policies you need to bring. Otherwise, it's going to be a challenge for you. Tomorrow, it's going to hit you back. So from now on, right, this is a request for all of you, whoever attended this. Always look at things from now with a security in mind. Because, I know you must have, but sometimes we are all busy with a lot of things. When leaving your desktop, laptop, mobile, always lock it up. Don't keep it open. Set a complex password, which, we talked about passwords a lot. Use managers, password managers. Stop writing the sticky notes or anywhere in the paper. If you find someone not following them, all of these, right, help them. Tell them that, hey, don't do this, and create a security awareness. Hopefully you enjoyed my presentation. I think it's right time. We will open up to questions.
Thank you, Muthu. That was wonderful. Can you please stop sharing your screen and see the chat box? There are questions.
Let's get to the chat boxes. Now it's stopped, right?
Yeah. Okay. How the information is secured in Zoom?
Great question. When I said, you mentioned about digital transformation recently, right? When the pandemic situation started, I'm part of one of the Tamil schools here where we teach kids a lot. The very first thing that we did when everything went down, started using Zoom and WebEx. We trained all the teachers overnight. In 1 week, we brought up 3,000 students back into online class teaching, whatever. And then came all kinds of security challenges with Zoom. People's pornography, that being showed, and especially with kids in the US, then we were very, very, very cautious not to get to that. Yes, companies develop new products, build new things, and there were security holes. But it is being fixed now, because there were companies, there were countries immediately stopped using Zoom. But a lot of information has been put into Zoom that things have picked up again. And especially now, Zoom is trying to be in India a lot because they are building specific things in India, specific things for India. I happened to came up to one of the person whom I knew. He became the engineering head who is going to manage a lot in operations in India now. So Zoom is secure now. It was having some security vulnerabilities. Every company, every software for that matter, when they come in, there are possibilities, there may be hacks. Always, as I said, there are thieves and there are fixes that comes out. How much ever you fix, there are people who try to steal again. So watch out for that all the time, and then we can definitely work on it. What else is there?
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, this is Afsar Ali. Sir, what programming languages are used to prepare this type of cryptographic algorithms and all, sir?
I am not specifically into cryptography,
Okay, okay. What
but
softwares we can use it, sir? Actually, because as a professor, we want to guide some engineering students. So we can tell them to improve their knowledge in this type of hacking mechanisms and
sure,
all.
sure, sure.
Uh,
So yeah, as I said, I am not specifically expertised in the cryptography area, but I will definitely get back to you. As long
okay,
as you have Dr. Ushaa's email, I'll send that information for you, and then you can do that. Yeah.
okay, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you. Anyway, thank you very much for a wonderful session, sir.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Radha has a doubt, Muthu.
Who has a doubt?
Radha,
Oh, okay.
can you expand the discussion on cloud storage safety?
Sure. Cloud again. When we talk about cloud, right? So where do we store? For example, Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, Apple's, iDrive, everything is cloud. But beyond that, when it comes to corporate data, we are going into Amazon, right? Amazon has its own Azure. So people take that and build systems in there and then store there. And then similarly, for example, we used to have the data centers within our system, within our servers. I know exactly who's coming into the system. I can control everything, the whole environment, including the physical machines. But when we talk about the hybrid, or even when we go to the cloud storage as AWS or even Google Cloud, we know they gave a machine, but that's a virtual machine. Reality is data center protection, and some of the things that I used to run in a server is not easy to run. Things are getting better and better and better, and there is an organization that controls all the cloud security environment. So they have updates every few weeks that we are all in the whole information industry trying to come up with it. And when they come up with new regulations, new requirements, then software is being built new. And these days it is secure, definitely, much better than before. But there is always challenges in the cloud security, because every time, as I said, right, there are, I couldn't say this, but there are hackers. They can tell you, hey, tomorrow I'm hacking your system, and then they can hack. That's for sophistication it is now. But cloud, it comes with different security mechanisms and different controls and policies that separate from the regular pieces. But definitely, yes, it is much more secure.
Thomas has asked a question whether
I see that.
do you think that completing a certification course by an individual will make him an expert in that domain? I'm really worried whether he's an expert in hacking or safeguarding.
True.
Well, actually, let me ask the question by myself instead of
Yeah.
texting that. Okay, so let me introduce myself. Actually, I'm a security guy who's working in an cybersecurity. Actually, I'm a trainer. Well, I'm having so many doubts that like plenty of organizations says that after completing a certification, they'll be getting promoted, and they'll be getting getting a high salary, all those things. Okay, but when I'm teaching, okay, like specifically if I'm going to say like one of the basic courses like for ethical hacking, and that duration will be like only 5 days. Okay, that is 40 hours, and in every day like 1.5 hours will be going for this lunch and breaks and all. Okay, so let's cover it like only like 35 hours. So I don't feel like in 35 hours I can create an expert in that particular domain. But still many organizations, see, I'm sorry I cannot mention any names over here.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure,
but
you don't have to.
to my concern that I feel like many organization is believing that after completing an ethical hacking, that means he's expert in he's expert in that domain. But
Okay.
my question is like, I know what capacity that individual is having. And according to the information security, we have like security auditing, all those stuffs are there, right? Because a person should be get a minimum qualification to enter into the information security and this cyber security. But why some organization are failing to keep this policy and to maintain such things. May I know, like, because I'm just confused, like, why such thing? Because like I have completed like 18 courses to be open, and right now I'm updating myself to this information security that you would have heard about, the CISSP course, that
Yeah.
it will take like 5 years experience, but unfortunately I'm only 3 years experienced guy. Okay, but still I'm fighting for that CISSP certification, as you know, this organization thinks that after completing a CISSP, he's expert in that. But to my
Right.
concern, I feel like even though if I'm completing the CISSP also, still I'll be having so many doubts in all domains. Then
Yeah.
how can someone say that I'll be expert if I'm going to complete that certification? So
Sure.
can I?
Very good question in terms of what certification means these days, right? So yes, you are correct. There are certifications which is like CISSP. It's very hard to pass if you don't know the subject. In reality, right? It's very hard. That's why even the rule is you have to have 5 years in security in order to start writing the CISSP. But when you first talked about security certifications in 5 days, well, typically those kind of certificate courses, or people look for certificate, and it's an exposure to what it means. That's all. If somebody is giving a promotion based on that, that's wrong in their company's process. Definitely wrong. But for CISSP, yes, they should get promoted, or there is a possibility that they can become much better. Um, Knowing in 5 days is great. That means they have, today, there's nothing. I have no idea what it means. If I go for a 5-day course, I know to some extent what it is. That's all I know. I'm not an expert, definitely not an expert. Based on that, I cannot claim any certificate. If some company is giving that, that's very wrong in their process. But if they have CISSP, you're correct. Even after doing the CISSP, even after knowing everything, unless you hit practically a lot in that, you're not an expert, but you're much better than the others. Well, what happens is, these kind of certifications where it allows today in the job market, in reality, if I apply for a position, there's 100 applications coming. The first thing that they're looking at is, anybody has CISSP? Whoever is not there, gone. 75 applications gone, right? It's easy for them to wipe it out. But again, within the 25. So that's why some of the interviews, when I take, have to take some interviews, I don't get into theoretical things of what they know. I get into give them practical situations and then say, hey, how do you handle this? By the answer, you can figure out whether they have handled it before or not. If it is theoretical, it's very easy. For example, these days, when you look at the books back in those days, I mean, Thomas, when you mentioned 23 years, I'm sure you did this. In database books, if you look at it, all the SQL queries are written in capital letters, right? The keywords. That's how it will be. One time in my life, somebody I interviewed, and then they were talking about something and say, oh, all the keywords have to be typed in capital letters. And I go, what? Have you done that? And then that's what that person said. That means it's very clear that he hasn't actually worked anywhere. He's read books. He can explain everything. He's really good in answering, but he hasn't really worked because he's never tried even typing, I guess. Or he has been thinking that he has to type always in capital letter. The capital letter is the book reference that is used. As you said, CISSP is great. Please do it. In CSM, if you're a manager, just doing that. CISM, those are definitely there. And if there are companies that if you're a good trainer, tell them, hey, at least give them a policy, say that this certification will give them exposure, but don't promote them. Right?
Well, thank you
And
so much, sir.
sure.
Because, like, I was really very much confused about such things. But but unfortunately, my aim is to, as I'm a security guy, I just want to create my awareness, so that I just started my free, online academy to just create an security awareness to all the people who are in need. And I'm just trying to cover up the CISSP to just, everyone needs a certification, right? Just because,
Correct,
like, if
correct.
I'm going to say, like, I know the security domains, means no one is going to trust me until I'm providing us some certification. So that's the
Yes,
reason, I'm just
yes.
to learn
Yeah,
some.
definitely do that. All the best. It's hard, but definitely do that. And then, as you said, today, hopefully, some of you took that kind of information. What is security and how secure can I be? Same thing. You do your part, and we all do from here. It just propagates everywhere. We think about security a lot. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Muthu. It was wonderful.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
I am Shan. Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I am sorry. Good morning, and I am Shanmu Sundar from Anna University. Um, Having spoken about information security, you made me insecure because the way we keep our data in our mobile phone and the people, as you rightly mentioned, every app asks for everything that is there in my mobile. We do all our online banking, have the data stored in Google Drives or Dropboxes, whatever it is. So, do you believe that those kind of drives would have security? Because we could see few days back, even Jeff Bezos or other great people of US getting the Twitter accounts hacked. So, is it safe to have it in those kind of open source cloud databases?
There's a couple of questions combined here. Let me answer that. Today, apps, do I have to install it in the systems? Yes, if you know banking systems, yes, do install it. But if the provider is providing, all kinds of latest software in it, use it. There are days, I know, before they used to put in hack operating systems. Try not to put them because they are not secured. People can hack into it. But usually, if you have a good phones, generally do it. There's nothing you can do without that. It's not going to work. That's safer. But when it comes to cloud, storing your personal data into the drives, Google Drives, and which also I think Radha asked about cloud storage in terms of security. Use it. But where do you access those data from is very important. If you access from a laptop that's out of date with in terms of malware, there are free malwares, there are free antivirus, right? Use those and block it. At least it will keep running. At least it will keep checking anytime you do this. And then mobile phones, if you're accessing those kind of sensitive data, banking, do not or never use the free Wi-Fi because you're connecting to someone else's server. They can somehow get your data. That you can avoid. There's one other question that you asked about hacking into Twitter accounts and all that. Yes, I mean, Twitter is a bigger company that they try to protect so much. As I said, when there are thieves, they will try to keep on attacking. This is what happens for any company. We take Google or Facebook, right? Microsoft. I mean, for example, in the US, the social security number, if you know, that's the key for individual persons. And there's only 3 corporations that run and maintain the social security numbers, where every time I want to apply for a loan, every time I want to do something, people go and check what's his credit history, right? That's what they do. Last 2-3 years ago, somebody hit and hacked that. So, I'm thinking, hey, I'm a security, you're a security. This is the key thing in the US. Are you saying that somebody hacked into my social security number? Yes, they did. They got about 147 million, social security numbers out, I think. The reason they found out is such a huge corporation. It's great. In one of the servers, they did not patch the latest patch. So hackers, there are heat maps. Unfortunately, I didn't prepare that. I would have shown you. If you go to search for heat map in, attacker cyber heat map, you can see millions of attacks happening at, industries. And then Twitter, Microsoft, if you look at Seattle, there's a lot of people keep on attacking every single second. So that's how hackers are trying to get data. So always try to be safe. But, normal usages, yeah, I mean, you never know whether you are in that pie or not. Somebody attacks that company. Like, I never thought my security, social security, would be part of that, 170 million that, or 47 million that they stole. So things can happen, but let's be safe.
Oh, thank you very much. So you can also see that Oxford University saying that Russians have tried to hack the coronavirus vaccine data. so thank you for that.
Sure, definitely. I mean, it's yes. I'm thankful that I'm able to feel you little insecure, because that is always should be there, because that makes us more cautious in terms of where we are accessing the data from.
That's true. Thank you.
Thank you, Muthu, so much for your patience and answering to all the questions. And can I request all the participants to turn on your video for a virtual photograph, please?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Today is the last day of our second international webinar, successfully completed by Muthu. We all studied together, so I'm happy to have him in our webinar.
Thank you, Ushaa. And you know, it's been years after that we came into contact. So I just hacked and found out who she is. I'm just kidding.
Can we have all of you, please? Please turn on your video. Okay, smile. Thank you so much. Thank you all the participants. So nice of you all to be here with us for all the 5 days of the international webinar, and looking forward to see you all soon. And thank you, Muthu. Thank you so much for your wonderful time, that too early morning. And God bless you. So thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you so much for patiently listening to me. And if I didn't address anything, if you want, send her an email and then we can
Yeah,
talk. There.
definitely. If I get a message, definitely I'll forward it to you.
Whatever I know, I'll help.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.